Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today on World Water Day. I'm honored to have people from across the province, water protectors, water advocates joining us. So thank you for being here. I'm also excited to share with you that today on World Water Day, together with my colleague MPP Saul, we tabled 3 private members' motions, hi Saul, that we believe will turn the tide in Ontario when it comes to water protection. As I don't need to tell you folks, I believe that, Ontario contains about 1/5 of the world's fresh water, and we know it's our responsibility to protect that water, not just for us, but for future generations. But despite what we have, which is this incredible bounty of water, we know that access to it is deeply, unequal. And we also know that Ontario's waterways are only getting sicker every year, particularly under this government. We know so many communities across the province are experiencing water issues. I mean, like we have lead in our schools, we have mercury poisoning that continues in Grassy Narrows, we have a suspected carcinogen in Tottenham. Provincially significant wetlands are being threatened by MZOs that want to build warehouses like we saw in Duffins Creek. I also, in my riding of Hamilton, we had, raw sewage that continued to spill into a protected wetland. Coots Paradise also continues to spill into Lake Ontario. And unfortunately, the list goes on and on. So, I know that that's why you're here today, and that's what is of a concern to you. But before we can talk about protecting our water and the reasons why we need to protect it, we need to confront the ongoing legacy of colonialism that contributes to the pollution and the poisoning of our waterways to this very day. So allow me, although we are meeting virtually, we still ask that each participant take time to recognize the traditional and treaty territories that you are on. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those territory you reside on, and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living on and caring for these lands since time immemorial. We understand how important it is to acknowledge the long-standing and painful history that has brought us to reside on the land, and we must continue to seek to understand our place within that history as partners and allies of all Indigenous people. And we cannot call ourselves allies when dozens of First Nations are experiencing long-term boil water advisories because this government has failed to recognize access to clean drinking water as a human right. So that's why today, again with my colleague Saul, we introduced the following motion, and I'm going to read this motion to you. Water is a human right. Water is a human right that, in the opinion of this House, the Government of Ontario should recognize access to safe drinking water as a basic human right and develop a strategy to end all drinking water advisories in rural, northern, and First Nations community. And this is not the first time that a bill has been introduced in the legislature to address this issue. I know Saul will talk about that, about how his bills have not been passed or have died on the order paper when this government was prorogued. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my seatmate and my colleague, MPP Saul Mamakwa from the riding of Kiiwetinoong.
Miigwech, Sandy. Miigwech, everyone. Thank you for being here. Basically, I think it's important, access to clean drinking water is such a basic human right. We know that. We understand that, but we know it's not happening. I know it's not happening because I continue to travel to, some of the flying First Nations that I represent. And as of today, there's 13 long-term boil water advisories. And then there's 5 short-term. Anything over a year is considered long-term. And I think the longest one is on February the 1st, 2022. This Kandaga had met its 27th year of long-term boil water advisory. I think it's important to note that when you live on those conditions, under those conditions on a daily basis, you just learn to accept that's just the way things are. You just normalize it. You just continue to live in those conditions without, where it has an impact, not just physically, but also psychologically, where you, no matter where you go in Ontario, you drink from a bottled water. You do not trust tap water. And I think when we talk about Ontario, when we talk about Canada as one of the richest provinces in the country, and also the richest country in Canada, that's not acceptable anymore. This is 2020. And I think these motions, these bills that we move forward certainly has we are all connected with water. We all need water. Without water, who are we? And I think as Indigenous people, we have always had this connection to the lands and the waters, before even before settlers arrived. And I think as caretakers, we need to take care of the water for our children, for our great grandchildren, for generations to come. We need to keep it safe, but also we need to be able to have access to clean drinking water for everyone. And I think I had a private members bill in the last winter, and because of the prorogation of the legislature in September 2021, that it died on the order paper. So that's I think that's important to acknowledge that, but I think it's important to be able to keep on pressuring the governments to consider access to clean drinking water as a basic human right. We know that. And I think this is the work that we need to continue to do, and stand along with Indigenous people that do not have access to clean drinking water. So miigwech for inviting me, Sandy, and we will continue this fight. Miigwech.
Thanks very much, Saul. And I've learned so much from you. I learned the expression jurisdictional ping pong from you, because rather than stand up and take responsibility or action, this government just points fingers at other different levels of government while kids and families continue to go without clean drinking water. So it's shameful. And the other thing that I learned to see, through sitting close to you and experiencing it, that there's just so many words. They say those words, but there's absolutely no action on the part of this government. So I appreciate that you continue to fight, and as allies, we will try to do the same. And I would, so miigwech and Nyawa, I have to say Nyawa because, that's my family. So what I want to say, and I know you're very well aware of this, and all of you on the line will be very well aware of this, that huge corporations like Nestle continue to profit from our natural resource. They pay pennies, and they make billions in profits from water when communities right near do not have access to that. And that is the case, for example, with Six Nations. They don't have access to consistent clean drinking water, and Nestle could, at the time was Nestle, continued to take water without permission under the aquifer where Six Nations is located. And last year on World Water Day, we introduced a bill, a motion to block the sale of Nestle's water permits to take water, because they were going to sell those permits. They did sell those permits to another company called Blue Triton, which is a good name for a large multinational corporation. I think it's an American hedge fund. So this continues to happen in the province of Ontario. And so not only Saul, but there's all kinds of water protectors across across Ontario and across Canada. And so I'm going to share now a video that we featured from a youth advocate and water protector who's from Six Nations, Akasha Looking Horse. She was speaking at the Wellington Water Watchers Troubled Water rallies, and she's going to share how her community presented Nestle with a cease and desist to stop extracting groundwater. She's a young woman. It's remarkable that she was able to just stand up and tell Nestle to, I will quote her, get off our land. So, we need more young people like Makasha to make these changes.
Many of us are lucky. We can wake up in the morning and turn on the tap and have clean water. Across the far northern Ontario, this is not the case. Too many First Nations and Kiiwetinoong live under long-term boil water advisories. We have lived them for so long that they have become normal to us.
The idea that private corporations can control our access to clean drinking water is as absurd as the idea of them having the ability to control our access to clean air. Clean water is a human right and must remain in public hands.
It triggered me even more that this is happening and my community of Six Nations is going without clean water. And so we went with the clan mothers and we gave them a cease and desist to get them off of our land and stop taking our water.
I held multiple protests with the Wellington Water Watchers and made sure that they knew that we did not agree with this and we want them to stop taking our water and get off of our land. That is our treaty land and our Indigenous land.
Water is a human right. It shouldn't be withheld from people, negotiated away behind closed doors, and it certainly should not be sold by corporations for profit. Powerful, powerful. And so, but unfortunately, Ontario continues to hand over permits to extract groundwater for profit, mine below the water table, and pave over wetlands. So we all here know that it's time for a new way forward. And that is the reason why we introduced the second motion, which I'll read to you now as well. And that is water is for life, not for profit. That in the opinion of this House, the government of Ontario should launch a transparent and public review of the permits to take water process, particularly for bottled water operations, to ensure permitting provides for the long-term stability, public use, and good watershed management. And so that, it's my pleasure at this time to introduce Jordan Takar, who's a youth advocate for water and is a board member of the Wellington Water Watchers. And the Wellington Water Watchers have been at the forefront of the fight to raise awareness of this loss of our public resource and our public water, and to make changes to stop this from happening. And so I'm pleased to have Jordan with us.
Hi everyone, my name is Jordan Thaker and I'm a board member on the Water Watchers and a University of Guelph student. As you are aware, today is World Water Day, and in a rapidly changing climate, we are witnessing the detrimental effects caused by the commodification of water. Water is for life. It is a life-sustaining source, and most importantly, water is a human right for all, not the 1%, not for white communities only, everyone. As a bit of background, here in the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation and Six Nations, Blue Triton has been permitted by the Ontario government to steal 3.6 million liters of water per day from the Arkell Spring ground aquifer. Simultaneously, 92% of Six Nations members do not have access to clean drinking water. The colonistic ties between the Ontario government and predatory water companies like Blue Triton are impossible to ignore. This is a clear example of how in a rapidly changing climate, the rights of Indigenous folk are disregarded for capital interests. This is a clear example of how the commodification of water further marginalizes BIPOC individuals. The Water Watchers are committed to advocating against Blue Triton, which is illegally occupying on Six Nations land, exploiting groundwater resources, and mass-producing plastic pollution, which is contributing to the climate crisis. We want to make it clear that Blue Triton does not have our best interests in mind. In our world where water is becoming increasingly commodified, we lose community and traditional knowledge of local water resources to predatory water companies. Municipalities are outbid by companies like Blue Triton in the chase for water under a rapidly changing climate and sold back to these municipalities in plastic water bottles. We truly want to adapt to climate change. We truly want to build sustainable water infrastructure. We want to protect our wetlands and groundwater resources based on plentiful local scientific and traditional knowledge. And if we want to truly end the Indigenous water crisis, then we will stop the commodification of water in its tracks. We will respect land back efforts for communities like Six Nations. We will build water infrastructure that makes decisions based off local traditional and scientific knowledge. And we will end plastic water bottle permitting for good. Not by 2050, not by 2040, and not by 2030. Now. And if we don't, well, this just becomes another news headline, another, oh, I hate people moment, because we all know it's a tragedy what Nestle and Blue Triton have done to these lands. I'm speaking to the NDP party when I say this. Don't let this become just another headline. I'm saying this as a POC, but also as a settler. We have an obligation as settlers to uplift Indigenous voices in every part of our lives, all spaces, because this is not an issue that you can just turn your head to. This is life or death. And by accepting the actions of companies like Nestle and Blue Triton, you are accepting that marginalized communities facing dire situations like water shortages is okay. Silence is complacency. Every minute wasted on debating is another minute where a Six Nations resident has to worry about their next water choice. Please understand the urgency. On this World Water Day, celebrate water as life, but along with your celebration, direct your energy towards the colonistic structures running water infrastructure in so-called Ontario. Uplift grassroots efforts because these communities have the local knowledge necessary to understand the cultural, scientific, and economic importance of such local water resources, which is something that Blue Triton can never understand nor respect. With love and anger, let's include everyone on World Water Day. Thank you.
Love and courage as well. I'm hoping that that's what we're all showing here today. So thank you for that. But it's not just permits to take water for bottling. That's a huge problem. Today, Saul and I met with people from all across the province on the lawn in front of Queen's Park. There were people from all across Ontario. There's people that are concerned about the Highway 413, people that are concerned about climate change, but also people from Tiny Township. And it's shocking to hear that Tiny Township, well, it's not shocking, Tiny Township has the purest water on the planet. And it is at risk because of gravel mining that is being proposed by this government. It's unbelievable that that's what we have to, that even has to be a fight, that it should just be accepted, that the purest water in the planet should be protected. And so let's just watch this video and just get further understand what is at risk. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Paul Cowley. Paul is the president of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Association. And Paul is going to explain to us the serious concern that we should all share about a threat to the purest water in the world in Tiny Township.
Thank you, Sandy. What I'd like Ontarians to know about our water in Tiny Township is that our groundwater currently is under a very severe threat from gravel mining. 2 specific pits operating on top of the Alliston Aquifer, which stretches from North Simcoe all the way south to Aurora. The water from this aquifer is the purest scientifically tested water in the world. And for this fact alone, we should be protecting it. However, our group has had to launch a legal fight to oppose permits to take 1.6 million liters per day just to wash gravel. The aquifer that these pits sit on top was also the center of another fight over 15 years ago when the government wanted to build a new dump site 41, on the same aquifer. Due to the extreme public pressure at the time, the governments listened, and in 2009, the project was halted. However, once again, here we are, we find ourselves rallying to protect these pristine waters. Currently, there is a group of internationally renowned scientists that are undertaking a multi-year study to understand why this water is so pure and what we must do to protect it. Should these aggregate operations continue, this one-time opportunity may be lost forever. We're not opposed to gravel mining, let me be clear. We recognize that gravel is essential for sustaining and growing our economy. We just want the province to temporarily suspend the permits for these two operations until everyone understands how they could affect the world's purest water. We don't think that this is a big ask, as there's no shortage of gravel. The province has already authorized the gravel mining industry to extract 13 times the gravel each year that we actually require to meet the average annual consumption. Although our Save the Water campaign is very localized, we lend our voice and stand with the other grassroots organizations that are fighting to protect clean water and call for proper governmental protection and policies at all levels to protect the groundwater in Ontario.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I just want to wish you the best of luck. You know, even though this seems like an issue that impacts Tiny Township, it's local, it's something that should be a serious concern and is a serious concern for not only the people of Ontario, but the world. So thank you for everything that you are doing and all the folks that are trying to stand up and protect water for future generations. It's really an important fight. And thank you. Those of you that don't know, Tiny Township is in a beautiful part of the province of Ontario. It's near Awenda National Provincial Park, and you know they are a small community, and they could certainly use our help in their fight to protect what's important, as I said, to the rest of the world. So it's now my pleasure to introduce a friend and a fellow Hamiltonian, Graham Flint. Graham is the co-chair of the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition, and he is here to tell us about the DAM campaign. Well, I think you're muted maybe.
Thanks, Sandy. And it truly is a privilege to be with you here on World Water Day. And you know, the speakers have set up the scenario and the situation so well and spoken so clearly about it. I mean, one of the comments when it comes to gravel mining and water that doesn't get talked enough about is how the gravel in the ground provides a service to us and through its handling of water. Paul's talked about the filtering of water for our consumption, but it's also the management of water underneath agricultural soil that leads to productive farmlands. Gravel in the ground serves us and provides value to us. Unfortunately, our regulatory framework and policy towards gravel in Ontario is all about digging it up, not about the value that it provides in the ground. So let's talk a little bit about that. When gravel is extracted from the ground, large amounts of water are typically used. If the operation has gone below the water table, then they have to perform a function called ground dewatering, which is about continuously pumping water out of the floor of the operation so the equipment and men and women power can work down there. They use large amounts of water for washing gravel to prepare it for delivery and trucking and storage. They use groundwater for dust control to try and keep the dust clouds from leaving the site and becoming more of an issue for the communities that surround them. So there's a huge amount of water that's involved in gravel mining. And gravel mining itself, Paul already mentioned the headline statistic, which is that, right now we've already authorized 13 times more gravel extraction than we actually need to meet current demand. But, another follow on that is there's 5,000 acres of land every year that is licensed by the gravel industry for future extraction. And then of that land that's all licensed and growing every year, the amount of land that's actually dug up and destroyed and the aquifers that are damaged has grown by 50% over the last 20 years. So we're continuing to scar the landscape more and more in Ontario. And the reality is, as Paul mentioned, is that the amount of gravel we use every year has actually been flat. In fact, in the last 10 years, it's gone down. In the 20 years since the turn of the century, Ontario's population has gone up by 25% from about 12 to 15 million people, but the amount of gravel we're using has gone down. So the industry is constantly saying they need more gravel because we're going to grow, but history shows that that just isn't true. But back to water. We talked about the fact that there's 13 times the amount of gravel authorized to be extracted than we actually use. Do you know that there's 4.6 billion liters a day granted to the gravel industry for water extraction? 4.6 billion liters per day. If you accept the data that, you know, as people, we use about 200 liters a day, that would be enough water every day for 23 million people. 1.5 times the population of Ontario. Now, let's be very clear. The gravel industry doesn't pump that much water every day. That's an extremely large amount of water, but it shows you the flaws in our permit to water taking system and why we need to overhaul the whole PTDW system, that we're putting that much water at risk by granting these corporations the rights to do that. Sets us up for a problem, and we just shouldn't be doing it. It doesn't make sense. The permit to take water system needs to be revisited. So what's the solution of this gravel aspect on water from the Reform Gravel Mining's Coalition's perspective? Is we're calling on for a moratorium, a temporary pause on the granting of new gravel approvals. I mean, this is a cry that's happening a lot in the climate crisis. The first thing you should do when you have a problem is stop making it worse. And the more approvals that we grant, the worse we're making the problem. So let's take a time out. Let's put smart people in the room. Let's figure out a new path forward so we can deal with gravel extraction. As Paul says, we need it to build our society, our quality of life, but we should have the minimum amount of gravel extraction we're doing, not the maximum. We have a policy now in Ontario that says there's no need to show need for a new gravel site. That's a policy that just doesn't deserve to exist in our enlightened day. So thank you for letting us join us today. If you're interested in the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition, please visit our website at reformgravelmining.ca and sign our petition. And let's see if we can move this issue forward. Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks, Graham. And those are honestly some shocking statistics that you don't have to prove need to continue to take water from, to take permits. It needs to be upturned or changed. Also, the acronym for your campaign is Demand a Moratorium Now, the DAM campaign.
DAM campaign.
Pretty much the best acronym for a campaign that I can think of. And so there's a lot of information there. So thank you very much for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it. And what we're learning is, of course, it's certainly about what we need to, as a new MPP, there's many things that were shocking, but to really understand the depth of how much our water is at risk was something that was an unfortunate learning for me as a new MPP, not just, across the province. Of course, we need to end water advisories. We have to end boil water advisories. We need to protect our groundwater from unnecessary privatization. Those are the first steps. But truly, to protect the water, we need to be going so much further than we are now. And, again, I mentioned Hamilton, but we learned this as a community firsthand, that we had 24 billion liters of sewage that spilled into Coutts Paradise. I forget the number, but it was, hundreds and hundreds of Olympic-sized pools full of sewage. And so, there needs to be legislation changed to prevent that from ever happening, because we don't want ever to see another community go through what we did in Hamilton when it came to our beloved Coutts Paradise wetland. And so, I would say that really is why we believe that, rather than a government that's, forcing sprawl, granting MZOs to pave over wetlands and pave over some of the headwaters of our most stressed streams and natural areas, we need a government that actually has a comprehensive provincial water strategy. I mean, it's so obvious that that's what we need. And so that's why we introduced the third motion that I'm going to read to you now as well. And that is that in the opinion of this House, the government of Ontario should ensure that decisions about water must be made on our treaty obligations, public interest, and guaranteeing access to sustainable water resources for future generations, and collaborate with Indigenous peoples, farmers, rural Ontarians, and conservation authorities in developing a provincial water strategy to protect our water, create jobs, and take essential action on the climate crisis. And so we know that communities across the province have been working to make sure, have been working to ensure that they protect their local streams. And that is true here in my riding of Hamilton. And so what I would like to talk about is an amazing group in Hamilton called Save Our Streams. And they're working hard to protect headwaters of several streams that are very important in the Ancaster Hamilton area. They're feeder streams, and they have an important role to play. So it's my pleasure to introduce another Hamiltonian. I know it's about Hamiltonians, but we seem to be stepping up for the water, and that is Nancy Hurst. Nancy is the co-founder of Save Our Streams, and they have been working so hard. Nancy is going to share with us the concern and the work that they are doing.
I'm at the Ancaster Creek in Hamilton, one of the jewels in the crown of Hamilton's watersheds. We're so lucky here in the city of Waterfalls to have these magical streams literally flowing through our city, our neighborhoods. Is water in our province valued as the precious resource that it is? Just scratch the surface and you'll see that there is so much that needs protection. I'm from Save Our Streams Hamilton, and our volunteers spend untold hours advocating for this water and helping to raise the alarm about what's at risk here. We do this because our current provincial government isn't. As it stands now, it's up to citizens to sound the alarm that Southern Ontario has lost over 90% of its wetlands to urban development, that our creeks and streams are polluted and gasping for life, that our marshes are being used as dumping grounds, and that our headwaters are being covered in concrete for urban growth. Here in Hamilton, we've stopped urban sprawl and frozen our urban boundary for residential development, but warehouses are still slated to be built in these sensitive areas rather than in already existing industrial zones. What about this makes sense? Why are we fighting our provincial government to save water, the very essence of life? Not too far south of where I am lie the headwaters of 3 different conservation authorities and of several of Hamilton's creeks, including this one. Our headwaters are the cradle of untold numbers of unevaluated, undocumented, and unprotected wetlands, marshes, and swamps. 1,300 acres of it is slated for industrial warehouse sprawl. Our headwaters are in serious trouble, and this is why we need a province-wide water strategy to protect not only what's here, but water all across Ontario.
Yes, thanks, Nancy. They've been doing some remarkable work to raise the issue that, that the community needs to be involved and have direct input into what goes on with our water. And a reminder that this government has basically, kneecapped the conservation authorities in their ability to protect to protect an integrated watershed, not just in conservation authorities. So thank you, Nancy, so much for the work that you and your group have been doing in Hamilton. It is shocking to see that one of those streams is actually slated to be another warehouse. And so this is not something that we should be seeing in any part of Ontario, given what we know and given the risk, imminent risk of climate change. And so, I just want to say how grateful I am to all the people all across Ontario who are standing up for the water, who are sharing their expertise and their passion, who understand that this is a human rights issue. This is an issue of injustice, and that water is a human right, and that water is life. And so I'm so grateful for you being here today. I just want to share with you that we have been doing what we can from our vantage point. We have been working shoulder to shoulder with many of the water protectors and water advocates. The community response, as I said, to Sewergate was phenomenal. We introduced the Coots Paradise Water Accountability Act that would, if passed by this government, would provide enhanced protections, not just for Coots Paradise, but for wetlands all across the province. We've held a number of Know Your Rights workshops with Environment Hamilton and the Wellington Water Watchers, because people of the province of Ontario need to know that they still have some environmental rights. There's some left. And so there still is the Environmental Bill of Rights, and you have the legal right to have your say when it comes to things that impact your environment. That's an important right that you have. I just have to say it was introduced under a new democratic government, and we need to continue to protect that. I can see, everything else is being eroded, so we need to to continue to protect that. And I also want to thank again my seatmate and my colleague Saul. Saul, you came to Hamilton and we hosted Water is Life Town Hall. And you were there. We had Dr. Kelsey Leonard. We had Makasha Looking Horse was there. And we had also Chief Arvo Looking Horse from Standing Rock, who came to share with us their wisdom and their understanding that, you know, Standing Rock is everywhere. So wherever we are, we have responsibility to protect our water. It flows. So water flows and it connects all of us. So, you know, we need to not only just heal our waterways, but see healing our waterways as a connector for us in communities all across the province. And so, you know, the motions that we introduced today are just a beginning or just a glimpse of the new approach that we should be taking to protecting our water and water protections. It should be something that a leading government should be working on. So I'm glad that we've all come together to help make this a reality, to raise up our voices. If there's something that you want to continue to do, if you go to my website, it's Sandy Shaw, MPP.ca. There's a petition, a water protection petition. You can add your name to that to make your voices heard. You can connect with my office. You can connect with Saul's office, and we can work together in whatever way we can to make sure that we have a provincial water strategy, that we protect water in all of our communities and all across Ontario. By the number of people that are here today, by the experts, the passionate people that are sharing their experiences and their concerns and their fears for the water, by all the people that were on the lawn at Queen's Park today to stand up for their water. It's an important issue. And I thank you. And Saul, I don't know if you want to say some parting remarks, but we are very grateful for you being here today.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's again, it's a path forward. It's always the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, and I think that's one of the things that we can do with the environment. That's one thing we can do with access to clean drinking water, but not only that, the access to clean water within whether it's on the land. So it's so important. Miigwech.
Thanks, everyone. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here today.